It should be.
Dane, how's it going? Welcome back, everyone. It's Daytona 500 day. DFS NASCAR season is underway once again. How are you doing, Dane? Are you excited for the season?
I sure am. Had the long off season, kind of like golf. Not too long of an off season, which is good. So, biggest race of the year. Get ready to get after it.
Yeah, we got a brand new car. We got to see it through practices. We had 4 practices leading up to the Daytona 500. We had the duels. We had the clash at the Coliseum. So we've had plenty of chances to see the car, to see the pit stops and that sort of stuff. Is there, I guess, before we get into the DFS side of things, is there anything that really stands out to you with this new car versus the old car? Maybe not that doesn't necessarily affect us here this week, but just overall?
I think the biggest thing for me that I've been trying to figure out about the season as a whole is that I expect, and we're going to know a lot more next week, not even still this week, as far as what teams are the best and things like that early in the year. But I expect there to be a certain group that is very good to start the year, and then it could just completely flip mid-year. There's going to be such a learning curve with these things for both the drivers and the teams, and how they work on them, and how they we're going to see it a lot with wrecks today. I mean, can't they just easily replace a ton of different parts of the car as far as the body work, like they did with Harrison Burton from the duels? I mean, I think that could be a big thing if they could get pretty quick service on them.
Yeah, agreed. That's kind of was one of the storylines coming in, was shortage of cars and parts and stuff. And they actually made it through practices and the duels. I think Burton was really the only one. Well, Logano is in a backup car. Shouldn't be a problem there for him. But Burton is the only other one really that had that kind of damage that they fixed anything too serious like that. So it actually went pretty good there. What I'm interested to see here at Daytona is the longer races. We did see in some of the shorter ones, especially the duels, where, we had some lap leaders. We had a lot of top 10 guys up there running good. What I want to see in this longer race here is not only the draft and teamwork, but especially the tandem drafting, to see if that really comes back, especially on the Ford side of things. They were really working on it more, and it seemed like, to me, that the Fords, especially, like getting together in 4 to 6 car groups versus the longer line. So I'm kind of interested to see how that teamwork kind of spans out here today for the Daytona 500 in the longer race. So very excited to get the season underway. Very excited to get this live show going again for race days. Excited to have you here on the first one. And before we get into it here, if anyone that is tuning in maybe isn't a member of Jägerbombs Fantasy Sports, want to check us out, you can get in for free. You can see it in the description of the video below. It doesn't look like I've updated that, so I will provide that here just in a second. I will get you that link for a free trial into our Discord channel. And if you want to check us out, head over to patreon.com/Jägerbombs. And for $10 a month, you can get our NASCAR package, which includes our cheat sheet, our picks every week, rankings, top bets, FanDuel, DraftKings, that sort of thing. Make sure to go and check that out over at patreon.com/Jägerbombs. And if you're into more than one sport, definitely check out our all sports package, which gets you access to, I believe right now we got about 9 or 10 sports running. So that's a pretty good deal if you're into playing multiple sports for DFS or sports betting related. With that, let's dive into the sheet. Let's talk some strategy. Let's talk some super speedway DFS here. So top of the board, this pricing, now you're going to see, let's talk about that first of all, is DraftKings has 2 separate contests for the Daytona 500. One is post qualifying. So before the duels, they came out with the pricing, which you're going to see here on the sheet. Same with FanDuel. The pricing was out before the duels, so keep that in mind. They also made a contest after the duels, so when they actually knew the qualifying. And to be honest, it's pretty sad. I don't have the pricing up, but it wasn't really that great. I'm not going to be talking about the new pricing. I don't have it up. I'm talking about the original pricing here. So we'll start at the top of the board, and I think he's going to be probably the highest owned play. We'll get into some strategy here in a minute, but definitely Denny Hamlin starting 30th. I didn't expect him to start. He usually doesn't start this far back, so getting him 30th, we're probably going to see 50 to 60% owned in GPPs, probably 80% owned in cash games. What are your thoughts on Denny, first of all?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be the highest owned. We've seen something similar with it last year with him in the 500, started back in the 20s. So I think we'll see something similar with his ownership again here this year. Gotta like him. I have tons. He's my highest owned guy, even at the highest price. That's something that when it comes to strategy for super speedways, it's price honestly doesn't even matter for any of these guys. We've talked about it a ton in both the Discord and in years past on these super speedway shows that it really doesn't matter at all how much money you leave on the table. I mean, I have lineups that leave 3, 4, 5,000 on the table, and it works out. If you look back, something I did last night was look back at the last few years of perfect lineups in the Daytona 500, and pretty much every single one of them had 3,000 or 4,000 left over at the end. You definitely want to stack the back, as Scott is saying in the chat. For the most part, I am definitely limiting my exposure to the top 10 as I do every super speedway race. But one thing I did notice in these perfect lineups is you don't want to, and something that I corner myself into when I go this full-on stack-the-back strategy, I kind of forget about those guys that are in that 10 to 15 range sometimes, and I get almost no exposure to them. And if you look at those last few years, last year there was a 12th and a 17th in the winter starting spots. 2018 was a very much an outlier year. You had Blaney starting third, led 118 laps. There were 3 in the top 16 on the winter in 2018. In 2019, there was a 10th place starter there. So 3 of the last 4 years in the Daytona 500, there's been a driver start in the top 12 on the perfect lineup on DraftKings. And there's always so many great place differential plays. So I think you got to get some exposure to guys in that range, like Chase Elliott, like Kyle Busch. It's got to a point, and what I was kind of talking to you about in DMs last night is it's got to a point I feel in the DFS world that everybody does this. I mean, this is definitely something out there now. It's even flipped, I think, to a point that these guys in the upper part of the top 10 are going a little bit under-owned for the most part in these races because it's all anybody talks about is stacking back. And it is the great strategy, but don't forget about these guys. And when we get to them, I'll talk about Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, and how much exposure I'm getting to those. But definitely limit your exposure to the top 10 as a whole, and as many as you're putting in a lineup. Probably only do one per lineup.
You nailed it. And that kind of led us right into the strategy part that I wanted to kind of go over a little bit in talking about not just stack the back. It's more about building yourself rules. And here, especially here, you definitely want to be contrarian. That doesn't mean go and get 4 guys starting top 10. That just means, okay, let's go look at the starting, kind of look at maybe some projected ownership. I think Denny Hamlin, number 1. We see Austin Dillon, Eric Almirola are going to be top 5 in ownership at their price. Daniel Hemrick maybe slips outside the top 5, but maybe see some Cole Custer. Fords were fast. Noah Gragson, 39th in that 62 car, which Brendan Gaughan, by the way, has done very, very well at super speedways out in the past, especially Daytona. So I don't mind that play. So, we've got 5 or 6, 7 guys that are going to be probably very high owned, kind of in a tier of their own. So going contrarian doesn't exactly mean going with 4 guys starting top 10, but you nailed it in talking about guys maybe in the 11th to 15th range, where normally if I'm building a cash lineup, let's just say a chalky lineup, I'd want probably, if I was building a cash lineup, this is actually where I would start, is Hamlin, Dillon, and Almirola right there at the start, probably even Haley, and get those 4 guys. Now, for GPPs, you can still get 3 really chalk guys in there and then just diversify with your other 3 and either leave a bunch of money on the table or start going with, like you said, Chase Elliott starting 11th, Byron's going to be probably in that top 5 ownership as well. I would think Logano's maybe 6th, 7th in ownership, something like that. But then guys like Bubba Wallace, if you like the Toyotas and want to go with them, Elliott and Byron, really that stack right there gets you a chalky play, and probably I would say Elliott's going to be 8th to 12th in ownership. Would you say that's fair? Something like that? So I like diversifying that way in terms of strategy, not just stacking the back. I mean, I have a lot of lineups, 3 different kind of strategies within my builds today, and it includes stack the back, where I'm just really filling up with different combinations of guys starting outside the top 20, top 25 especially. My second strategy is a little bit more balanced, like you said, where I'm diversifying and going a lot more towards maybe having 3 guys starting 11th to 15th, 18th, somewhere in there. And then my other strategy is maybe playing like trying to get maybe 1 lap leader, but just kind of from what we've seen is maybe get 1 guy starting 5th to 10th and kind of diversify that way, and maybe leave $3,000 on the table type thing.
Yeah. Something else that I've talked about a little bit in chat is stacking, and you mentioned it a little bit as well with the teams. And that's something that I ended up hand building my 20 max today, which I through the year I'll probably use an optimizer to do the 20 max or more lineups. But today I did hand build the 20 in the $3 20 max. And the reason for that is because I wanted to stack up some teams and manufacturers a little more and make the lineups correlate to one another, whether it's Chevrolets, Toyotas, like you mentioned, or Fords. And the Toyota, I'll mention a couple of my favorite looks there before we get into the specific plays. But the Toyotas now have added another one with Kurt Busch. So you got Hamlin, Truex, Kyle, Bell, Kurt, and Bubba, all that should definitely work together. I think that's very interesting to get make a couple lineups out of your 20 that have 4 or 5 of those guys. And then if you fall on a combo of 2 or 3 of them in one that you're not trying to stack, then so be it. But I think Toyotas make a very good stack today. And then the other one that might go a little, there's going to be exposure to all these guys, but might go a little under the radar as a full-on stack, is these second tier and third tier Chevrolet teams like JTG Doherty with Stenhouse, RCR with Reddick and Austin Dillon. And then especially the one that I really like is this Colleague and Spire, who kind of went together with the Charters a little bit in the offseason. You got Haley, Hemrick, Castle, and LaJoy. All those guys, I think you can stack them up. I think the RCR guys, Austin Dillon and Tyler Reddick, are going to work more with these type of teams like JTG, Colleague, Trackhouse, Spire, all those. I think you'll see Reddick and Austin Dillon work with them even more than the Hendrick team, who is all going to be, all 4 of those guys, are going to work together. But you can get some nice correlation in guys that are going to work together in these second-tier Chevrolet teams. You mentioned Gregson as well. He has an RCR alliance with that Beard team, so that works together as well. And, yeah, that's a nice part to the sheet that you can go and do those combinations if you want to. And
definitely for super speedways
for the teams, for sure.
Yeah, it definitely helps for super speedways. I always make sure to put this entry list tab on there just to show the teammates, because they're, especially this year with the new car, it seems like they talked about it throughout like all 4 practices. Boyer especially, how they're going to be working together. Now, something else that was interesting, just looking at the season overall, Denny Hamlin had mentioned, is he had a tweet out there that said, I think it was a tweet or someone had quoted him and tweeted it, that he figured throughout the season, and I mean, this is full Daytona Talladega anyway, so we're used to this, but there's going to be drivers where he said their average finishes are going to be going up dramatically at a lot of tracks versus what we've seen in the past. And he said mainly due to the new car and not the parts failure or not the part shortages, but more failures trying to figure out the new car, especially early in the season. So, I mean, we'll talk about that more in future weeks, but that's kind of what we're used to is kind of variants like that here at Daytona anyway. So when we're talking about stacking and stuff, that's in a perfect world considering that because what happens is, and Boyer said this absolutely, or maybe it wasn't Boyer, it was Tony Stewart in the pre-show this morning on FS1 I was watching, and they were talking about, plans are all great until the first wreck happens. It takes 20 cars out, and then it's, it was Boyer said it's usually now I'm going and taking someone else's dance partner that they brought to the dance is kind of how he put it. So when we do talk about this, it is a perfect world where there is no wrecks and these guys are going to work together. But still, even during all those wrecks, you're going to find guys at the end of the race. You're going to find more instead of, say, Hendrick working with Hendrick, Childress working with Childress, and so on. You're going to see Chevys, Fords, and Toyotas, especially towards the end of the race. If there's a lot of wrecks and there's, say, only 2 Toyotas left, a bunch of Fords, which look like they drafted the best out of all the teams anyway, Toyotas might get left in the dust, but we don't really know that. Like you said, Toyota's added an extra car. Kurt Busch has had success on super speedways. Bubba's had success. So I think that only helps the team overall. If you're stacking Toyotas, it really helps because in the past, being short that many cars makes it very interesting, especially if you lose a couple because of wrecks and stuff. So definitely go and look at that if you're making stacks and making correlations. And I bet you I would say 90% of my lineups today, there is a lot of team stacking correlation. I did run a couple lineups, like I said, where I'm just stacking the back, and some of those stack the back lineups, which are just extreme, trying to get as many combinations of the guys starting, like I said, 25th and back as possible, where there is a lot of correlation between them, just the way it worked out at this race. Let's go back here. Like Harvick is a nice one to do, starting with, say, like a Harvick, Almirola, you're back in that team. And then Custer, that would be my top team stack just because of place differential. You get 2 starting outside the top 30 in the team. And then Harvick, who's had some success here. He's won a Daytona 500 back in the day. And he's had some, back-to-back top 5s here. So that would be my favorite team stack. Who is your favorite, say, 3-driver stack?
My favorite team stack is a portion of those second-tier Chevrolets, and since it includes this guy, I do want to discuss it because we've got a couple questions about Hemrick, who is going. He has now failed the 3rd time, so he will have a pass-through on the first lap of the race. So he's going to go a lap down for sure, and should be able to catch the draft the 2nd time around. But honestly, this does not change a thing for me. His place different. It changes. It adds some risk to him. I'll say that. But he's starting 33rd. I mean, he's going to get that lap back as long as he runs fine early in this race. Probably either the first stage or first wreck. He's going to get that back and be right where he was to start with. And for him, it's definitely. And really anybody today, it's more about where you're at the end than at the beginning. So add some risk, I'll say, but still one of my favorite plays.
Yeah, for sure. I put him to blue on the sheet and lowered like I showed here in the rankings. This week the sheet is free, so make sure to get over, grab that free trial to Discord. I'm going to grab that right here now for anyone that's just tuning in, wants to jump in today and chat with us. The NASCAR channel within our server is free for everyone today. Just let me grab that here and I'll throw that in the chat. I also put up the first part of the giveaway today. Said it was giving away $100 in prizes. Starts with the DraftKings free roll. Make sure to join there. I have that link posted just above in the chat. Make sure to go check that out. I'll post it a few more times here before the end of the show. What I just posted, that is the link to Discord. So I'm going to type that in and put a arrow here, Discord link. Get in, check that out. You get all the rankings every week. This week, the sheet is free, so make sure to check that out. Make sure to get in the free roll. Now, the second part is I'm going to go back through the comments and do a draw for $25 for a Fanatics gift card there as well. $50 for the free roll, whoever wins the DraftKings free roll. $25 for whoever gets second. Thanks for your support. Excited to kick off the season here. Let's get back into it. Yeah, so with Hemrick, like you said, he's going to lose a lap, but as long as he, keeps up with the field, or if they even separate into 2 or 3 groups, as long as he doesn't he stays with one of those groups, which I don't think is going to be an issue. He's going to get that lap back, and then, like you said, it's where he's going to be at the end. I do like that car. Going and looking at that team, I had that over here. Yeah, the colleague team, him and Haley for sure working together. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, if you're looking at the sheet this week, I didn't get the tutorial video out. It won't be out till next week. Hey, Mark, how's it going? Happy Daytona Sunday. Was practice times are back this year. Super excited for that. We didn't mention that in the beginning, but excited. We always have it for Daytona. And one thing for Daytona to keep in mind is I don't really look at any specific practice. We've got practice 1, rank, lap time, 2, 3, and 4. What we don't know with looking at this information on the sheet right here is who's drafting or not, because what I noticed between the draft and the single car qualifying, there's about 7 seconds difference in lap time. So you can see a lot of these cars in practice 4, there was only 20 that went out, but most of them worked on drafting. But what I did for the practice average, and I've only got 10% weight on practice, is I averaged the practice time, not the ranking. So that's where that comes from. But most of the model over here is weighted on this Q inverse, which is just the qualifying inverse, because we are looking for place differential here. That is very big in the model for me. And then I've got a little bit mixed in here. So that's what that is. If you're new to the sheets, definitely reach out and or ask questions in chat here. I can help you out a little bit more. Tutorial videos coming next week. If you're familiar with golf, the model is very, very similar to that as well. The other part of the sheet that is big, so you got track history, track type history, so that's super speedways this week. We've got form. Once we get a few races into the season, I'll also have current form in here. Is the fantasy matrix. We're going to refer to these a lot as well. So pretty much what it is, it's a list of all the drivers and their prices, starting positions, how many points they need for 4, 5, and 6x value on DraftKings, as well as FanDuel. There's a tab for that as well. You can come in here, and if you create your own copy, you can come in here and actually type in projected laps led. I don't do that for super speedways, but you'll see my projections come up at all the other races where we're looking for dominators. And then what you have here is these are finishing positions. So we have finishing positions for every driver and what their points would be. So this would be raw points, obviously, right now, without laps led or fast laps for every driver. So Denny Hamlin gets first, 74 points, second, 70. You can kind of come in here and kind of look at driver versus driver and do a lot of comparisons that way. So make sure to check that out. That's something I'll cover a little bit more in the tutorial video, because this is something that we do mention quite a bit. We don't have projections per se, but this is what we use to kind of project driver versus driver, floor, upside, that sort of thing. And then I'm working on some other info as well. Me and Dane have been talking about maybe splitting stuff up into, let's say, track type, and showing not just a driver's average finish and average DK points for that track type or that track or whatever, but looking at the highs, the lows, the median average finish, that sort of thing, just so we can get a little bit better feel on a week-to-week basis when looking at this stuff. And with the new car, a lot of my databases are going to, well, as we get more data, obviously going to roll into just 2021 data alone. But for now, we have to rely on some old data as well. So there are a lot of question marks going into the start of the season. It's going to make it a lot of fun. Super excited. With that little bit of a talk there, me rambling, who are some of your other plays? Because you can tell mine here, and I talked about the chalk ones, obviously, in green. I have a lot of exposure to Hamlin, and then probably Dillon and Almirola would be second and third in my exposures, then Harvick, then Haley, and then probably down here in the Gregson LaJoy, just because of how much Hamlin and Harvick and Dillon with his price at 8,400. Where are you going to after those guys?
Yeah, so I mentioned Hemrick as part of that colleague stack. That would be my favorite stack there. So Haley and Hemrick, and then you can also add in the Spire side with LaJoy or Castle if you wanted to. But as far as my highest owned, it's very similar at the top. I tried to get different this week in the way that I constructed lineups with those stacks and things like that. So that's how I went about getting different. But Hamlin, Austin Dillon, and Almirola are my top three. And then fourth is Hemrick. So I have 40% Daniel Hemrick, so I'm sticking with him. I really hope it lowers his ownership today. I would expect him to be somewhat popular with where he was, but now maybe he drops down a little bit. And then behind that, I mean, it's definitely going to be Stenhouse and Logano. I like both of those quite a bit. Stenhouse is a part of that Chevy contingent that I mentioned before. Logano, I think he's a definite nice play starting 20th. We know he's very aggressive here as far as, I guess, with his blocks like we saw the other night. Obviously adds some risk, but adds some upside, just like Ricky Stenhouse. Aggressive here, but has tons of upside because of that. And then Haley, you mentioned how really good he is at super speedways coming up from Xfinity with this colleague team and
oh yeah,
starting 25th. You got to like him too. He would be my next highest on. As far as those top guys that I kind of mentioned before that I didn't want to forget about, Kyle Busch is the guy that I have the most of in that range, starting 10th. I have about 20 to 25% of Kyle Busch. And then Chase Elliott starting 11th would be my favorite. I have, I think, 3 of 20 with him, so 15%. Those are really the main guys at the top of the starting spots that I like. Not getting many other guys. I think I have one Blaney. That's going to be underweight because I've heard a lot of talk about Ryan Blaney. And I expect there still to be ownership on him. Who knows, maybe 15%. I mean, I'll be underweight for sure there. Those top guys, Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman, I just have no interest in going to. They're surrounded by Fords behind them. I just don't see them leading or doing what Blaney did a few years back and dominating the race. The guy that I could see doing that, maybe that I do have one lineup out of 20 with, and because he's so good at super speedways, and it's Keselowski.
I knew it.
He could just lead those Fords around there for a while, and if he finishes up there, he could be on the winner. But I only have one of 20 because there's so much downside if he doesn't lead, or basically he has to lead because there's going to be so much place differential and finish up there. So who are some of the other guys that you like?
First of all, I like Jeremy's lineup here. FanDuel, he's got Byron Harvick, Almirola, Hamlin, and Hemrick. Absolutely love it. I got nothing bad to say there. Now, on that top tier, I was going to talk about Keselowski. It's funny that you brought him up right before he turned it over to me. I don't have any in DFS right now, but I'm with you where I'd only have one in hopes that he maybe dominated, let's say, 50, 60 laps or something like that, and a top 5 finish. I think that is totally fine. He could hit at his price for sure at 8,200. Where I've got him is I bet him on Poker Stars. All my bets today went over to Poker Stars. Cool bet, I was fine with other sports. The odds were better, like for PGA especially. But every single driver I wanted to bet today had better odds on Poker Stars, so that's where I'm going with my bets. Keselowski is definitely in there. The Fords look like the best team in terms of drafting. I think he could get there. He is my pick to win today. I didn't pick him in our one and done just because it's Daytona and I don't want to go there. Also, for anyone that's watching, maybe jumping in as a new member or a trial member, if you want to play in a one and done league, got a $20 one and done league for our members this year. It's just the standard. You pick one driver every week. And what we do is for the regular season, you only get to use a driver once. That resets for the playoffs. If you want to in $20, we've got a special channel set up within our Discord. Just hit me up in the DM or in the NASCAR talk channel, and I'll get you added before the race. Other than that, my one and done pick this week was Burton. And just what I found was I wanted a lot of exposure to the Fords. Problem is, all the Fords are qualifying too far forward for me to use in DFS. Just there's, like you said, you nailed it with there's too much downside with these guys starting top 10. There's literally not much upside if they don't lead laps. That's the way I kind of look at it almost every week when looking at the guys starting top 10 is you want to pick 3 of the top 5, maybe 3 of the top 8 at a given track that you think are going to get the laps led. And the rest of them, their downside, if those 3 drivers that you pick get their laps led, the other 3, the upside is just somewhat limited. That's just the math that we use looking at the fantasy matrix. So I'm with you there. So my exposure definitely with Keselowski is in the betting market. I also like, in terms of betting, seeing as I'm on the topic, Kevin Harvick. I got him at plus 2,000, so I did like that. Top fives in his last 2 Daytona 500s. Like I said, he's won one before. The Fords have been fast. I love him for DFS. So in terms of overall, he's right up there. I think I had him ranked, right behind, third behind Hamlin, Dillon, and Harvick. The reason I had Dillon ranked higher here is just because I probably should have Almirola ranked a little bit higher too. But I kind of had them together, stacking them a lot, Harvick and Almirola, adding Custer, and probably about 50-60% of those stacks. But for some of my maybe lower owned guys that I'm pivoting to here, Elliott is definitely up there. I think he's going to, if he's as low owned as I think he could be definitely a great play. I think he could win this race for sure. Second here last year, starting 11th. So if he wins, he's still going to get you double-digit place differential. Maybe not monster place differential, but he can get you there. Let's say he could even get up there and lead 20 laps. His upside's still about 60 points, which is fine. That's getting you around that 6x. And then if you stack him with a bunch of guys with place differential, you don't got to worry about him only getting 6x because you get these guys that have potential of getting 8, 9x. So definitely like that. Tyler Reddick. I don't know if you mentioned Tyler Reddick or not, starting 15th. He's another one in that range. Maybe you want to get 2 or 3 of these guys in your GPP / not just GPP builds, but more your contrarian builds. Ross Chastain's another one, started 19th. Definitely like them. Now let's go through some questions. What's your thoughts on Biffle here? I just seen that come up.
I don't have much. I think he is. I mean, there's potential there that he could do fine. If I was going to get any more of him, I wish he was a little further back. But, I mean, he definitely could get up there and get you a top 15, top 10. I mean, who knows with the carnage that could happen. But he's going to need a lot to go his way. I just don't have a ton of interest. I like so many other guys more.
I agree. I think his odds of hitting his 5, 6x are a lot worse than other guys in that range. If he was starting 35th, I'd probably have exposure in my player pool, but I don't have any at 28 because, as you can see here, for him just to hit that 6x, which is kind of what we're looking for in GPP from these guys, as your upside, that's like a 17th place finish. I don't see it with that team as being high odds. Sure, I think, like you said, you put it best where he needs a lot more to go right for him and wrong for others for him to hit his upside and be in the winning lineup. Are you guys playing any Eric Jones? Eric Jones is another one I don't have any exposure to. He's had some Daytona success here. I believe that 2019, that might have been still with Joe Gibbs, that third, and then I believe he moved in 2020 into the team he's in now. So I think that was the transition year. But either way, starting 13th, there's way too much risk with him down here. Same with Burton. I'm off Burton. I'm off Briscoe. I'm off McDowell in DFS. All these guys starting top 10. Really, Kyle Busch, I probably want a little bit of in my Toyota stacks, but he would be third in my Toyota stacks. Bell's down there as well. I'm not really wanting a whole bunch of Bell starting 12th. I got more Busch than Bell for sure. But these guys starting top 10, I won't have a bunch of. If you do feel like they're going to win the race, I would rather bet them in the betting market. I think you can get more value with them that way, or say like a Prize Picks, which with Prize Picks, by the way, I'm not really fond of their NASCAR product this season. It's Fantasy Score. I'm just looking at it now. I'm bringing it up. I'm going to slide this over on the screen. So what we got is Fantasy Score, which I believe is closer to FanDuel scoring than DraftKings. I'm going to have to get someone to confirm that on me, but place differential is definitely in there because you got Denny Hamlin at 56.5. Then you got laps led on here. There was actually a couple on that I liked earlier. Kyle Larson, I would probably go the under on laps led on him.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he's going to get out and dominate, and I could be wrong. I was wrong at the duels and how the duels played out for sure. I didn't think we'd see Dominator, but again, I should have seen that coming because I did mention that they were short cars, short parts. Teams were probably going to be, taking it easy, not pushing very hard. Well, that's what happened, except for I didn't play it that way in DFS, so unfortunately. But I do like the under on the laps led there. Fastest laps, I'm not really sure what to play there. And then net cars passed, not really a big fan of the props on there. I would rather get into your And what I didn't have on Cool Bet that I do like on PokerStars is we have race winner bets, we have top 3 finish, and top 10 finish. So not only did I bet Keselowski and Harvick outright at plus 15 and plus 2,000, I also bet them top 3 as well to kind of do it like an each way, I guess. But I didn't mind the odds either on Keselowski plus 350 and Harvick plus 400 for a top 3 finish there on those. So you can win with both. You can win with all 4 bets, actually. Or no, you can't. Both can't win the race. You can win 3 out of 4 bets, and you're looking pretty good on those. So those are my 2 picks to win. I like the value. I don't really like betting like Hamlin's plus 900. I think he's got a good chance to win. Elliott at plus 1,000. I don't mind that either. Where are you going in like the bet in the outright market? What's your card look like?
Yeah, so really there's only one guy that I'm going to bet today, unless I pick some up live. I actually grabbed McDowell live last year. I think they were during like some red flag, and I was just sitting there and added a couple guys that were very long shots. But one guy I liked, and you kind of stole my thunder on him earlier, is Tyler Reddick. I think this second contingent of the Chevrolets is going to be very good today, and he could go. He's not a guy that I have tons and tons of exposure to on DraftKings, but I am overweight, and I think he could win this race. I mean, he was good here in the Xfinity Series, hasn't been that great, but steadily improved over his time in the Cup Series here at Daytona. So I think you got to have exposure to him. And yeah, that question there, Haley and Reddick, I have more Haley, but I like Reddick maybe even a little more for leverage. It just kind of depends on what your rest of your lineup looks like.
I've got more Reddick than Haley right now, actually. I just checked. So that's I didn't think that was going to happen before, but I'm just looking at the mate.
30% Haley and 15% Reddick. But so that's in the 20 max. But if you look at my hand, I did a 3 max because I had 3 Millie tickets that I had won. So I threw 3 in there, and I have him in 2 of 3 of those. So I have him more in the ones that I think is going to, not hand builds because I hand build everything. But with that one, my thought was there's going to be more leverage in this contest that pays so much to first. Why don't I take a guy who's lower on? So Millie Maker, I like Rick more. Overall 20 max, I like probably like Haley.
Nice. Haley does have more points per dollar upside, obviously, starting 10 spots back. So that kind of gives him, like, on DK, 10 extra points upside there. I think Reddick has more overall instead of where he can finish. Starting 15th, like, he starts getting into that 6th, 7th place finish, and he's hitting 6X there. So inside the top 5, you're looking at 7 to 8. So I love it. Love Reddick here.
And I like this comment from Kimberly here, Reddick and Haley together. I think that might have just been our answer that we should have been giving there, because I do definitely have some of that in those 3 in the 3 max. I have some of that when I'm stacking up. You can kind of throw in, if you want to do that second tier Chevy stack that I talked about, you can do those 2 with Hemrick. And I'll give you another one for the core of that lineup would be Austin Dillon. So add Austin Dillon and Hemrick to those 2, and you've got that RCR group, and then with the Colleague guys, and they could all work together theoretically.
Yep, and then you can easily get whoever, pretty much whoever you want to fill it in. You can get Hamlin, who's going to be high owned, and you're left with 9K. You can go down and be a little bit more contrarian with 2 guys within the top 15 starting with Elliott. It gets you that Chevy correlation there as well. That leaves you 9,100. There's a lot of ways to go with that core right there, most definitely. And I do have a lot of lineups with, who were we talking about originally? Haley and Reddick together there for sure. 100%. So that's a really good core. I really do like that. Make sure to get on that for sure. You could probably run that 10 different ways, to be honest with you. And then, as you get into those, say, 7th to 10th lineups in that core 4, that's when you start leaving, $2,000-$3,000 on the table and going a little bit more contrarian with them, maybe than they already are with a top 15 starter there. But definitely a lot of potential there with that core for sure. I'm with that for sure.
I see Johnny is asking about Larson, and this is the only show that you're going to ever hear me say this, probably this year. Just don't play Larson.
Not the only show, because they're probably going to qualify well at the other super speedways. So this is the first of 4 times where we're probably going to say fade Larson.
Yeah, just don't do it today. I mean, it would be different if there were all 4 of the teammates were like starting in the top 5 or something, and we thought they could get up front, but just don't play them.
Right? And then, even if old school rules where there was no stage points, we have seen teams in the past where some teams will just hang out at the back the whole time, and maybe not go for it, where other teams will try and be up front. Well, that's not the case anymore. So you need dominator points if you're going a guy in first, because he only has negative place differential value. So you need him to dominate and finish, win the race. And that just doesn't happen at super speedways. When you start looking at winning lineups, Dane brought this up earlier and he showed me before. I think that was the last 4 Daytona 500s that you had posted all the way back to 2018. There was only 3 drivers out of, what was it? It was the perfect lineup on DraftKings. So that's 6 times 4 out of 24 drivers in those perfect lineups. There was only 3 starting top 10. 2 were in a race together. That was in 2018. That was a little bit different of a race, that one, where we saw Blaney lead a bunch of laps in that one. But other than that, we're seeing usually the optimal lineup has, let's say, 1 driver between like 8th to 12th, and then usually like 4 to 5 outside the top 20, with like 3 outside the top 30, or at least the top 25. This week will be probably 2 or 3 outside the top 30, I would think, just with the drivers and the good drivers and good cars that are starting back in the field for this one. So yeah, it's I have very, very little exposure to these top 10 starters in this race for standard DFS purposes.
Yeah, and after I sent that to you last night, I went back and looked at the fall race or the summer race at Daytona. And so basically, you look at the last 8 Daytona races, there were 2 guys that started better than 10th. 2 times there was a better than 10th place starter in the perfect lineup. And in those summer races, 2020 was like the most outlier one. There was a 6th, 10th, and then it goes back into the 20s. But there were 2 starting in the top 10. And then 2018 was a 13th. So again, that range there, you just can't forget about the 13th, 12th or 10th to 15th, like you said. 2019 was a very, very much an outlier with the rain shortened race that Haley won. That was a full-on stack the back win. But and then even 2021, 20th was the highest starter that was on the winner, the perfect lineup there last year too.
Yeah, Blaney was starting 6th and ended up winning it. But after him, it was stacked necessarily stacked the back in that one, but outside top 15 to top 25 was absolutely loaded there. And then Justin Haley, of course, he just absolutely loves Daytona. So for me today, the pivots, and I didn't pivot off Denny Hamlin. I've got him right now in 12 of 20, maybe even 13 of 20 in my 20 max right now. The biggest pivot that I did was off of Justin Haley, and not that I don't like him. I think there's more risk in his chalk than there is Denny Hamlin chalk, and that's where I pivoted a lot of that exposure to Reddick and Chastain is kind of where I spread that ownership out to. I still have about 20% Haley, but he's probably going to be 30 to 45% somewhere in there, probably top, like I said, top 3 to 5 in ownership. So that's my biggest pivot here. And then some of my other pivots would be like the Toyotas, which Bubba is a pivot, obviously, off of Dillon and his elite place differential. Stenhouse off of Almirola in there. Like Kyle Busch, you mentioned him. I don't have a lot of Kyle Busch. I've mixed him in a little bit just because I do have some Toyota stacks and I wanted just a little bit of it. But most of my Toyota stacks are Hamlin and Truex. Let's see, I don't have him blue on here, but starting 14th. It's been rough for him at the Daytona 500, but I think he's going to be super low owned as well. So I like mixing him in with Hamlin, so I do have some of those stacks as well. So, okay, we're going to start wrapping things up here. We'll go over a few more questions. I see there's a few more questions since I left the screen. Yes, I mentioned Custer early on. What I like Custer for is my Ford stacks that start with Harvick and Almirola. Getting that teammate in there, him starting 31st, getting those three together, you get the fastest cars, I think, the fastest manufacturer early on, especially at Daytona, especially pushing each other. They talk about the Fords having a flatter front, so they can push a little bit better. I think that could be a little bit of an advantage early on in the season. So I do like Custer a lot at his price. Even in the non-Ford stacks, I do like Custer overall. He's right up there. So thanks, Mark. Thanks for tuning in. Liz, what do we got here? Yes, still on Hemrick for sure. Not too worried. Like, I wasn't super high on Hemrick to begin with, but I didn't really lower my exposure. It's about 15 to 20%, I think. I don't have all my lineups up, but it's somewhere right in there. And then Cody Ware. Yeah, I actually didn't have to go to Cody Ware yet. Gregson and LaJoie was as low as I've gone in my lineups, and I felt very comfortable about it. Actually left money on the table, which was something that I wanted to do. So I didn't get down to Cody Ware, but I think he's fine in that 51. That 29th finish may look fine, but he wouldn't have got there. That's kind of what lowered my exposure a little bit on him. For 5X, you need 24 points, and that takes us over to a 25th place finish. So that 29th place finish for him only got 16 points last year. So that wouldn't get you there. That wouldn't be in a winning lineup. So there is some risk with Cody Ware. So I didn't happen to get there, but I do think with Rex and stuff, he's another one like Dane mentioned before. He needs a lot of things to go his way for him to get to the optimal lineups, but it definitely could work. He's had some success here. Like that 21st would definitely put him close to it wasn't in the perfect lineup, but it definitely would have been in cashing lineups that year for sure. And then, do you have any Cody Ware in your exposure before we move on, Dane? I was going to ask that.
I do not. No,
not at the moment.
And Briscoe is the only other guy going to the rear. So that, I mean, I was already
Briscoe
out
and
on Briscoe, but
so you got Briscoe, Hemrick, Logano, and Burton. No, yeah, Burton goes to the rear because were his adjustments after qualifying?
I don't think he goes to the rear.
No, I don't think so.
But Logano does, but it doesn't really change.
Yeah. And for anyone that is going to the rear, this is one race where I'm not really worried about it whatsoever.
Right.
Especially these guys that are already at the back that are going to the rear, like that happened in the Xfinity race yesterday.
Some of them might go to the back. Some of these guys might go to the back that aren't even failed tech, so they might just fall back. Hamlin is notorious for doing that. All those Kyle Busch might do it. They'll try to get grouped together. So.
And Briscoe was the deck lid, it looks like. I'm just kind of going through the NASCAR news channel and chat here right now, which is another feature we got set up in our Discord chat for every sport. Is we have a news channel, and then just some of the top guys on Twitter. We have those feeds fed right into the Discord, so you can just pretty much get all your information in one place. Is kind of the thought behind that. So that's where I kind of monitor before the race and just kind of look for that. But again, Daytona is a place I'm not really worried about drivers going to the back. If I've got exposure to them when they're going to the back, not concerned at all. Yeah, Kenny mentions it here as well, building lineups. I haven't been looking at salaries and just had a nice 6,600 left on the table. Totally fine. We've seen so many times. I wish I had more time to go back and get all the data from not just the perfect lineups using like Line Star, but actually looking at the optimal and GPP winning, top 5, top 10 lineups. So like putting together hundreds and hundreds of lineups. I don't have the power or the time to do that, unfortunately, but I'd love to see that data of just how many times a Daytona or Talladega race has just ended up in carnage and just absolute place differential. Not even so much place differential, but just opening the player pool. Like normally we're looking at a player pool of like keeping it under 15 drivers at like 1.5 miles and really making our stands on a lot of drivers. You can't necessarily do that at these unless you're playing like single entry or 3 max. It's very tough because one wreck. And it was weird yesterday. They went almost the entire race without a wreck. And then they threw that white flag and cars just all of a sudden just went absolutely everywhere. Chaos just ensued. There was marbles, I swear to God, in that white flag yesterday. But today being a longer race, I think we see multiple. Again, it's a points race, points at the end of these stages. I think we're going to see some carnage. So But again, we can only predict what we can predict. We can't predict those. So it's all about stacking. It's all about place differential for the most part. And again, one final time, if you're looking to be contrarian, you can either leave a bunch of money on the table, like Kenny mentioned there, or you can just start targeting, like me and Dana mentioned quite a bit here, is kind of looking at those guys, 10th to 15th, 10th to 16th, instead of limiting your exposure to say one of those guys, open it up to maybe 2 or 3. And in the case that we have a quiet-ish Daytona race where we see a lot of the guys, we start seeing 4 or maybe 3 of the drivers could be in the optimal lineup starting top 15. Where we do have a race like that, at least you're set up for that. And you're probably not going to be sharing the winnings with a whole bunch of people because it is going to be a contrarian build. So keep that in mind as well. Thanks for joining in, guys. Going to try and keep this show absolutely every week. Pre-race is what we're going to shoot for. Some weeks we might do it, maybe the night before, depending on me and Dane's availability and stuff like that. But we'll keep you tuned in chat. We'll keep you tuned on social media. Make sure to follow us there. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. Just search Jaegerbombs Fantasy Sports. We're on Facebook, as well as Twitter at Jaeger_bombs9 there as well. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be picking the winner of the $25 from the person in chat here. Once I get all my lineups done, we're into lock, the race is on. I will go through and throw all the comments into the optimizer, pick someone out. So make sure that you are in the NASCAR talk chat in our Discord. I will announce the winner there. Good luck to everyone that joined in on the DraftKings free roll today. $50 for first, $25 for second. Those are in the form of a Fanatics gift card that I will send. It's an e-gift card. So again, make sure if you're not a member to get in the Discord chat, because if you do win the DK free roll, I need you to reach out to me somewhere, either Twitter or in the Discord chat. Just show me a screenshot of your account, DK name, and that you've won, and I will send that money off to first and second place. Dane, excited to get this 2022 season underway. Let's go Kyle Busch. I would love to see first Daytona 500 win to add to the trophy case here. So go Kyle Busch. Any final thoughts?
No, I think we got it. Going to be a fun one for sure. And
thank you for all tuning in. We had a good turnout here for the first race of the year. Like I said, going to keep it going, and we'll see y'all next week. And we'll see y'all in winning picks once the race is over. Cheers, everyone.
With the million.
With the Millie Maker winner right here beside me. Oh, that way. Got my arrow wrong. Cheers, everyone. Have a good day.
Good luck.